If, say, you have an
since I hit
affidavit and you have
record.
proof that there were 1,000 ballots in a particular precinct that were
getting the
erroneously
shadows as I
filed, or
record.
administrative failure, or fraud, or whatever, you bring that to the court. And the court could rule in your favor, and they would say, you're right. There's 1,000 votes
They
here
try
that
to
are
block
improper.
that. They try to block that.
At that point, before the recount starts, and with all the other accusations and all the other cases that are brought, the court will say, before you start counting, you need to remove X amount of ballots from that precinct. And at that point, blind ballots are pulled out of that precinct. And then once all the ballots are adjusted and once all the things are taken care of, then the recount proceeds with both campaigns in the room, and a winner is eventually awarded.
All right, so people need to understand that the process. Now, when you're talking about getting signed affidavits, this is under the threat of perjury. They're doing this, right, under oath, sworn affidavit. Okay, do you have to get to as many affidavits as there is separation of votes? Or, for example, I have all the varying laws in all the states. That, you know, your state of Wisconsin, for example, very clear. Any member of the public may be present at any polling place, and counting is open to the public. Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan, Nevada, every state allows this, but it didn't happen. Now, when that part of the law is violated, how do you find remedy when now, okay, what is the court order? We're going to recount them, but in the interim, do we know what happened to them? Do we know what the people opening them did? Can you have integrity at the end of that process?
Well, first of all, you're right about Wisconsin, and most states have the same rule, which is totally open access to every part of the election process. Everything from making sure that the poll books are proper, that people say whether you should have access to make sure when someone says, I live on this street and this is my name, you should have the ability in the polling place during the poll watching to observe that part of the process. In fact, almost every part of the process, except for obviously how somebody votes. But to your question on, do you have to have the threshold of votes in order to bring the action? The answer is no. You can bring, every single vote matters, and you can bring each one of your complaints to the election commission, and then you can appeal each one of the complaints to the actual court of appeal within that jurisdiction. Where things do get dicey as far as, do I have the ability to bring a case to the Supreme Court that alleges I've got 10 votes here in Wisconsin that we know are fraud, and the court's looking at it and say, wait a minute, but you lost by 19,000. Well, the court's probably not going to take jurisdiction over that case. It doesn't mean you don't have standing to bring it. It just means that the U.S. Supreme Court's probably not going to listen to it. So it's important at some point that your fraud has to meet a certain threshold before you get to the point of appealing the state, the Supreme Court of Wisconsin to the U.S. Supreme Court. So there's some practicality involved as well.
All right, great analysis, good information. Because, if the fundamental laws partisan observers deny that opportunity, it takes away people's confidence and integrity in any vote counting. Just common sense. All right, thank you, Reince Priebus. Now, Kayleigh McEnany says in 2016, they've actually gone back and looked, 1% of mail-in ballots were rejected. Now, if you look at that margin, well, that could easily tip the scales in the following states: Pennsylvania, Arizona, Wisconsin, and Georgia. Kayleigh also is going to join us in a second. Wisconsin's primary alone, take that for example. The rejection rate was 2%, about 23,000 ballots. That's less than the margin the president would need to make up the difference. Here with reaction, RNC Chairwoman Ronna McDaniel and, White House Press Secretary Kayleigh McEnany. All right, Kayleigh, let's start with you. Explain what those percentages mean, and explain, you're in the process of getting these affidavits. You have, for example, you brought a pile of them with you tonight.
That's right, I did, Sean. We keep hearing the drumbeat of where is the evidence. Right here, Sean. Good. 234 pages of sworn affidavits. These are real people, real allegations, signed with notaries who are alleging the following, among other contentions. They are alleging this is one county, Wayne County, Michigan. They are saying that there was a batch of ballots where 60% had the same signature. They are saying that 35 ballots had no voter record, but they were counted anyway, that 50 ballots were run multiple times through a tabulation machine. That one woman said her son was deceased, but nevertheless somehow voted. These are one of many, many allegations in one county, in a county no less, where our poll watchers were in many cases threatened with racial harassment. They were pushed out of the way, and Democrat challengers were handing out documents how to distract GOP challengers. These are real, and anyone who cares about transparency and the integrity of the system should want this to pursue to the discovery phase.
You know, I would imagine, Ron and McDaniel, if this was the Democrats and the margins were this thin, and you had this many people, you know, a sworn affidavit.
Left wing, right wing.
Well,